Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I have an episode today I'm really excited to share with you. I have Chris Carter, CEO and founder of Global Comix, here to talk to us today. This is the new spinner rack of comics. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us and informing our audience all about Global Comix today.
Oh, dude, thank you for having me on. We can't do what we're doing without the support of everyone in the community, and everyone plays an equally important role, especially folks like you. So thank you.
Yeah, so we got a chance to meet for the first time at New York Comic Con. We have very similar sensibilities in terms of comics and what's available, and as I said, kind of this idea of the spinner rack and being able to browse for comics. We know comics are expensive. We know times are tight. So why don't you let everybody know what Global Comix is and how you're trying to reach both longtime readers and new readers, and what you're doing to facilitate that.
Sure. So Global Comix is both a comics publishing distribution platform and a community. We we have comic books of every format and every type, from the top publishers in the U.S. to folks in Europe, indie creators from all around the world, manga publishers, and even some studios from South Korea within the toon format. And so we're kind of the one-stop shop for getting all of your comic needs, regardless of what kind of content you're interested in, what kind of stories tickle your fancy, this, that, and the other. And I guess our goal is creating an environment for all these stories to find audiences worldwide, and that kind of is the source for how we think about making our platform, why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and why we make equal bets on both, veterans of the publishing industry as well as the long tail of folks that are creating amazing stories every day.
So let's talk about the model here. So is it like I sort of feel like you guys are right in that space where Comixology used to be, and unfortunately, that platform just isn't what it used to be. But you did have the ability to buy a single comic, or you had the ability to do a subscription. So I kind of lean toward everything available as a subscription being a better model. But what does Comixology offer in terms of that?
Global Comix, you mean?
Yeah, it's for digital. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now we're a subscription primarily service. There's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But we also offer, for folks that are on the website, the ability to sell DRM-free PDFs, right? So there is this download and keep and collect component, but that's something that's turned on for each book by the publishers themselves, and it's not something that we're kind of controlling or governing. Going back to subscription, the reason why we believe that subscription is the best primary way of accessing comics is because, simply put, people don't have gigantic budgets. And when people, let's say someone has $25 or $40 or $50 or something like that per month for enjoying their comics hobby, they're going to spend 95% of that on stuff that they know and stuff that they're expecting. And the opportunity cost for those folks to go and explore and try new stuff, if they need to pay to unlock everything first before they even know what they're getting, means that they're just generally not, right? And kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, that we really are striving towards getting audiences in front of all of these amazing stories that folks create. By having a subscription model to unlock everything, we are not penalizing folks for exploring against the edges and trying out new stuff from creators, new stuff from publishers they might not even have heard of, these types of things. And so what we see as a result is that folks are actually fanning out and reading a lot more different stuff than what they just came in for, right? Like maybe they came in for, like Transformers, or they came in for Superman or something. And then when they finish those books, we actually see them reading stuff from indie creators, and that's super awesome, right? Because then we're living into this promise that we're giving everyone.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and I think worthwhile because it leans into what I was saying about being the spinner rack, where you have the chance to browse. So yeah, I really encourage you, everybody, and it's very affordable as well to go with the subscription model. And I want to talk about being able to sample other things, because what is really interesting is what you all have built. So, I create an account, I go in there, put my email, password, and what have you. Before I get to the actual comics, there's a little bit of of a questionnaire, and I imagine that's where those recommendations come in and the chance for people to browse. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because at least I found for myself, I'm not just specifically interested in a genre, right? Like, sure, I can say I like sci-fi, but I don't like all sci-fi, for example. And kind of being able to categorize and have really rich metadata on what a comic is, what a story is about, how what kind of themes are in it, art styles and writers and these types of things, has allowed us to really create this recommendation engine that is much more personalized than if we simply only had this is a comic or a graphic novel or a manga and a genre. Right. And so this onboarding experience is entirely set up around, okay, well, maybe you're someone that like alien themed things and maybe you like space and time travel and these types of things. And so you go through and you'd say like, okay, well, like both comics and manga that have this type, I don't care if those themes are necessarily in an action, fantasy, or a sci-fi genre, so I'll click all of these three off. But then those three themes, or maybe more, right? But are things that I'm really interested in. And what that allows us to do is under this For You tab in the app, we can suggest only that, right? But not only that, when you are browsing through the discovery experience, I'm sure you've seen this little match percent that's on some
Yep.
comic books. That is directly related to how much of the metadata on the comic or on the series matches your interests that you've told us, right? So if it says 100%, for example, it means that you are interested in up to all six themes that they've classified their comic with. You're interested in the type of comic it is, right? Like comic, graphic novel, or manga, webcomic. And you're interested in their genre. And what that really helps is, okay, when we do these recommendations, or when you browse through the home feed, you're able to quickly understand, okay, this is something that might be relevant for me. Let me take a look at this, and then you can jump into the story.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't mean you have to read it, everybody. But if you've got that subscription model, it doesn't cost you anything to check out the first couple of pages. And that's the other thing that I want to let everybody know. Link to the Global Comix website in the show notes, and you can go to the on Chrome or whatever, Firefox, and check it out. This really works really well on a phone, which it's been challenging for me because it's so small. But we'll talk about that in a second. But even if you don't sign up for a subscription, you can understand what the experience is like. You can create yourself a free account. You can go through the setup process that Chris is talking about, and you can go to a comic and look at the first couple pages and see how it's displayed, whether you want to read on your phone or desktop computer or a laptop or a tablet, because it really is an experience that works. You guys have done an incredible job, Chris, of zooming in on the dialogue, but still giving an overall feel of the page. And it really does seem like you're doing that. You're going through and paying attention and giving care to each comic individually to make sure readers are being presented with the best experience. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges of doing that and why you feel like it's important?
I mean, the challenge of, okay. The biggest challenge is a mathematical one. There's over 1 million pages of comic books from just publishers on Global Comix. If we wanted to do that for all content, this is right now a process that's a combination of computer-assisted detection and a human that's actually going through and kind of, okay, well, this is the panel or this is the outlines that I want to focus on, and kind of like this is, panel to panel to panel, panel to panel configuration. We have teams of people that are doing this for every comic that's coming in, to the best of our ability. But the biggest challenge is just time. It takes, maybe it takes 15 minutes to do a book. we get, thousands of those every month. And so, it's not something that we can offer ourselves for everyone. But when creators are kind of self-publishing, they go through the same process. They have access to exactly the same tools, and they're able to kind of create this experience in the spirit that they intend for consumers, for readers to experience their work. Um, and so, like the hardest part there really is, and if you're a technologist like me, you're like, oh, cool. Well, we should just be able to detect all of the panels and outline and trace that. Nope. It turns out that comic panel detection is one of the hardest things to do because there's no uniform anything. And
Exactly.
there's so many panel breaks that just have no rhyme and reason as far as the computer is concerned.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Being in IT myself, it's kind of like the reason self-driving cars are never really going to be a thing. Like it's too unpredictable, right? Like there's too many variations, too many variables to build something. Oh, you do it this way, but then the very next comic, it's completely different. But again, there's a lot of value. Unfortunately, it is a manual process, but a lot of value, everybody, in the way that it's presented, because you do have that option of going on a panel to panel with focusing on things. But there's other ways to read it. Like some people don't want to zoom in on every panel; they want to see the pages as a whole, and that's available as well, right?
Yeah, the panel to panel is an optional thing. It's on by default. If you don't want to read in panel to panel for a comic that supports it, you can just toggle that off on the splash screen. Um, the default layout, actually, depending on whether you're on a phone or a tablet, or if you're holding a portrait or landscape, will actually have different recommended settings. So, for example, if you're on a phone and you have it in portrait mode, it'll be single page, and it'll just you swipe, left to right. Yeah, left to right. Or rather, you read left to right. If you take your phone and you do it horizontal, it'll actually do a double page, but it won't constrain the image inside of the viewport. So, like, you can actually do a double page and scroll. On tablet, the single page layout is the same, but it constrains the whole image inside of the viewport. And sideways actually gives you a double page where you see the whole double page at all times. You can still override and configure like whatever you prefer in the viewer settings, but we really, we spent a lot of time thinking about how do we present the comic in the best possible way for any device that people might be on, phone or tablet, depending on how they're holding it.
Yeah, and it's really important because you being a technologist and a comic fan, you know how important the visual component is. And going back to what I said earlier, yeah, I've never had a global or rather a digital platform, digital app on my phone where it was good enough in my opinion. Everything's always too small. As big as phones have gotten, it's still always been too small in my opinion. So typically I'm on a 13-inch tablet. But this is the first time I'm like, man, especially the panel to panel. It gives you everything you need to be able to read on the phone. So I think you guys have done a fantastic job. So kudos for that.
Why, thank you. And, most of the credit there goes to all the folks that are doing the configurations and setting it up. Tech is a tool to enable people to tell awesome stories, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. Well, right at the top, you mentioned this being, a platform to distribute comics, and there's again everybody a wide variety, and I'm sure Chris, behind the scenes you're working on getting more books and more publishers on the platform. But you also mentioned being a publisher. So if somebody's watching this or listening, and they're like, well, yeah, I'm looking for a platform to distribute. I'm a comic creator. Can you talk a little bit about what that process is? I mean, I'm sure you don't just let anybody, slap their stuff up there. So talk a little bit about, hey, I'm a comic creator. I want to get more eyes on my book. I think Global Comix is a good place. I like their platform. They're up and coming. What does that look like for me as a would-be creator?
Actually, we kind of do let anyone just publish and put it up. It's very similar to YouTube. All you need to do is you go to the website, you hit the publish button in the top menu, and that'll take you to your start publishing page. what that'll ask you to do is create an account if you don't have one, then create your creator or publisher page, your identity. Um, that once you've done that, you'll, create new series and create a release. You can drag your PDF in and you can publish. That whole process can actually have you live within about 5 minutes for a single
Wow.
book, with everything fully set up. And then as soon as you publish, it's live. Like other people can go and read it, and it'll show up in our news sections and in various different places. Um, the thing that is one of the things that we really focused on when we wrote the algorithm for popularity on the platform was that activity closer to now in time counts way more, like logarithmically more, than activity further away in time. And what that actually essentially means is that for new folks that are coming in, if you're able to build just even a little bit of traction, right? Like couple of hundred readers maybe, and maybe a couple of comments here and there, some add to libraries. The popularity algorithm will pick that up and it'll start showing up in what's popular right next to books that or series that might have been there for a much longer period of time. Um, and so really kind of it's just looking at the signals that we are capturing on what do people like. Are these books that people are completing, etc. And then being able to use that to make recommendations to other people. Oh, hey, you might be interested in this type of thing. Um, and so as an indie creator, you have just as much opportunity to make it big and to get, hundreds of thousands of readers as any of the big brands that are on the platform. And in fact, there's a couple of examples that I could point you to with folks that have achieved exactly that. One of my favorite ones, for example, is Falling Awake by Jan Ditlev. It's a single guy creator who made this graphic novel, 270-ish, I think, pages. And it's phenomenal. It's just so good. And it rose in the rank into millions of views on its own.
Wow, fantastic. And what are the options to monetize? To getting, per view, or how does that work?
So you can choose to monetize the books themselves in two different ways. The first is the baseline. Are you monetizing with subscription or not? Right? And if you have a subscription, or rather, if you turn on the subscription monetization, you'll choose where in the book does the paywall kick in, or where in each of your books if you have multiple, right? And so our recommendation there is usually if it's a longer form book, let's say 70 plus pages, that you put your paywall after the enough content has been shown, but there's a cliffhanger,
Mm-hmm.
right? And especially when we're talking about way longer collected editions or omnibuses or compendiums, there's nothing wrong with giving away, like if you have a 500-page compendium, there's nothing wrong with giving 150 pages free and then, turning on the paywall. The second option is an additional layer, which is do you want to sell this as a DRM-free PDF? In which case you set the price for that. And then you just hit, set for sale, and that's it. It'll show up on our website on the e-commerce part. But going back to subscription, how do you make money? The subscription is, it functions this way. At the end of your subscription period, we look at what is all of the content that you read? Who are the owners of all of the books that you read that were paywalled? And then we say, okay, well, maybe you did 100 pages of I don't know, Superman. Maybe you did 50 pages of Batman, and maybe you did 50 pages of, I don't know, Falling Awake, something like that. So now the owners of Superman and Batman, which is DC, would have 150 pages worth of content, and the owner of Falling Awake would have 50 pages worth of content. So in this case, DC would get 75% of your subscription minus our cut, and the creator would get 25% of your subscription minus our cut. So it's really just divvied up amongst owners of content that you read, and directly reading stuff supports the creators. It
Wow,
doesn't go into
that's
a big
fantastic.
pool. It's not, split that way.
That is so awesome because so often it's okay. I'm going to put my stuff up there and I'm getting, a flat rate. So it's yeah. This is one of those things where a rising tide. Like you're getting uh, compensation based on what you've actually done. Like it's very much merit based. So that yeah, that's really obviously you got to keep the lights on. So you guys are going to take your cut, but then everything else being divided up on that basis, and you can point to that and say, hey, look, it's fair for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're DC, doesn't matter if you're Marvel, doesn't matter if you're self-publishing. You're going to get what you deserve based on, what percentage. That I think there's a lot of value and equity in that. I think that's a really awesome way to do it.
Thank you. It goes hand in hand with this mantra of how do we get readers in front of the long tail of stories they otherwise might not try out. And by doing that, how do we compensate the creators who are making those books? It's a symbiosis.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it because that's the other thing, right? Like if I'm self-publishing and I've got my project on Global Comix, I'm going to encourage people, hey, go check out my comic on this platform. That's the way that you can support me. But the other part of that is now we're leaning into not only are you supporting that artist, but based on the subscription model and being able to browse things, that's how they discover other things. But also as a reader, I'm being serviced, right? Like I've got this great platform. I'm paying a flat rate per month, and I can read the stuff that I like and know, like Transformers or Superman or Batman or whatever. But also, it doesn't cost me anything to check out this other content and discover new things. And like you said, like it's just this symbiotic thing that can be cyclical and feed on itself. So I mentioned earlier us meeting at New York Comic Con. I know you guys had a presence there. What was that experience like? Are you hearing from people that have checked out the platform and love it? Are you hearing from people that, hey, I've never heard of this before. I want to go and check it out. Like, where are you in terms of building the community and the kind of the reader base for Global Comix?
Well, I mean, it was our first it was our first booth at a convention. Like we've been to conventions for years, but our core premise up until this year was really just kind of, all right, let's meet with creators and let's meet with publishers and let's develop these relationships and get people onto the platform so that
Right. Yeah.
there's enough books for people to discover. Um, I guess you could say we didn't really start pushing for consumer awareness until the launch of our app at the end of last year. Um, so we launched the app, and then we found, there were a bunch of problems and challenges and things that weren't working correctly, that we decided we wanted to fix. And so we turned off all marketing for the first half of the year and restarted in June. Right. So really we're just 6 months into consumer awareness where we're, really working on that for real. Um, and so that, it wasn't surprising to us that a lot of people that came up to us in the booth, they're like, wow, this is so cool. You got so many awesome stories. How come I've never heard of you? And it's because, we spent so much of our time building out the catalog and building the relationships with the content creators first before we kind of went to market. And so, what's the major takeaway for us being, well, after having the booth and after having a presence at New York Comic Con and coming out guns blazing with announcements like our partnership with DC and our partnership with Valkyrie, there's a lot more people just mentioning us in the zeitgeist. And like the way that we're looking at that is that now that like word of mouth network effect engine has actually started working. So, if you ask me the same question in 12 months, I'm sure I can tell you, like a lot about readers that have found us.
Fantastic. It's a date. I'm going to ask you in a year and see where you're at. I imagine it's going to grow organically because that's the other part about this, right? Whether, if you're a comic reader, you know this, especially us that go in every Wednesday and what have you. Word of mouth from a fellow comic reader matters so much more than seeing an ad in a comic or an ad on a YouTube video or what have you. Like if I have another comic reader telling me, "Hey, read this book," and I know they like things similar to me, I add, I give so much weight to that. So I've been telling people, hey man, you got to go check out Global Comix. First of all, it's super affordable. And second of all, the reading experience, as I said, second to none, especially on a smaller screen. So there's going to be people, watching, listening out of the audience that are going to go, okay, but what if I want to read like the newest stuff, like in terms of release? Like, are we talking day and date here? Is it all older stuff on the platform? What does that release schedule look like for the new stuff that's coming out? Again, huge catalog of back matter, and those are all great. But if I'm somebody who wants to be current, like say the latest Transformers issue, how long? It comes out on a Wednesday. How long until it's available on the platform?
That actually depends a lot on each individual publisher. There's a large amount of publishers that we have day and date, and things are always available in the latest. Then there are some that we don't. There's some publishers that we're working with through kind of like a comic ebook type distributor middleman. And in those cases, it depends on like when does that middle layer get the files and the information and all the assets. That being said, we're working towards having a model that supports day and date for a much larger, let's call it spectrum of publishers and creators, that likely will come with an additional kind of business model unlock, right? So maybe something like, the most recent 30 days or 45 days or whatever might be hey, pay to unlock this thing now, or wait until it goes into the subscription sometime later, right? And that's kind of one of these requests that we've seen and that we've gotten from especially the larger publishers that are a little bit more reluctant to put everything on a subscription model initially. Right. And so, we're looking at how do we enable that. And the moment that we do, I would suspect that, features like pull lists and availability of the latest and greatest from many more is just going to be there. It's something that we're investing in, and we know, right? Like, if you're the type of person that absolutely wants the latest and greatest, then you're also probably one of the hardcore fans of that publisher or that IP.
Yeah, and again, everybody, these comic shops, direct market, it's important. We got to make sure that they survive. We got to make sure the publishers survive, and everything going to day and date just doesn't make sense in a subscription model, because then why would anybody do anything other than pay their flat rate and read everything digitally? So I mean, even if you go to like Marvel Unlimited, it's not day and date versus your subscription. If you want the newest stuff that came out on Wednesday, you're paying extra for that. So it's finding that balance. But again, I think Global Comix is doing it the right way, and there's a lot of things that are available there. In terms of publishers that you, kind of a wish list of publishers that you still would like to have on the platform that maybe aren't there yet, you have like a wish list? Give us your top choices of people that you're working on to try. If you can, I mean, if you could say, maybe you don't want to divulge that.
There are so many ways that I can answer this question, but all right, let's go with this one. I want to have every comic in the world available on Global Comix, and ideally, I want to be able to offer every comic in every language. So, is there a wish list? Sure. I mean, like, I want to have top manga publishers on the platform. I love that. I want to have all of the US publishers, give Marvel and DC and IDW and everyone else. That sounds great too, right? And we see requests for, can you get these guys, or can we get those folks or those folks, or like, I'm really interested in this series. Can you? And this is the type of feedback that we see a lot, especially from inside of the app. And of course, we're listening to that, right? But in a perfect world, we could just tell everyone you should be on our platform, and they'd say yes and have no choice. But that's not exactly how it works, right? So,
what is the reluctance? Do you think is it people worried about you're going to be here today, gone tomorrow? Because again, we've seen that with a lot of these digital apps. They've kind of here today, gone tomorrow. And I kind of feel like it's because the quality wasn't there, and maybe they didn't do what you all did. You talked about it earlier, not marketing and not really giving a push until everything was working and you had a good catalog. I feel like that's what differentiates Global Comics. You guys waited till you had there's a fantastic variety of books and a ton of books on this platform, everybody. And again, the reading experience is second to none. So do you feel like that maybe that is a little bit of the reluctance of these publishers, or do you know why some publishers seem more reluctant?
I mean, there's a mix of different things, right? Like I think if you're just looking back for the last 10 years, there's been a lot of comic platforms that came and went, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some percentage of publishers were like, we were burned by that. We invested a lot of time into getting our metadata and our files up on the platform, and then they disappeared 3 months later. Um, and some amount was that, and kind of for us showing our staying power, since we've been around now for many years, and we especially focused on the creator and publisher relationships early on, was the unlock. Then there's another cohort that's perhaps was more, well, digital is scary because we don't want to cannibalize our sales. And then COVID happened, and they're like, oh, well, having all our eggs in a single distribution channel basket probably wasn't the good and best idea.
Right.
And so, some people were convinced that way. And then there's some whom we have been in talks with for like 2 years before they finally made the jump. And generally speaking, I can say that, and this is just kind of a fact of life. The bigger the company you're trying to work with, the slower they move.
Oh yeah.
And so it's not just the matter of like, oh yeah, this is a great idea, we want to do it. It's like, okay, this is a great idea. How do I convince the 50 other stakeholders internally in the company that this is something that we want to do, and so on and so forth. And then, like the last layer there is also kind of, when I mention things like manga, for example, we haven't had a presence in Japan, and we haven't been focusing on doing business development to those publishers, and so that is effort, and it's work, and it's strategy, and it's planning, and we need to kind of have a holistic go-to-market. Like, okay, let's say we do get the content. How do we get the word out? How do we get readers for this? And so it's just kind of, you don't try to do everything at once. You try to start in a space and take as much of that space as you can, from an operations perspective as a company. And then once you get to the edges of that space, you can start thinking, okay, well, where do we go next? And how do we get there?
Yeah, well, again, based on the strategy that you all had on the initial rollout, I trust your judgment. You got a small team. You can't do everything at once, like you said, as much as you would like to. So I will say this, everybody out there in the audience, or if you're joining us on YouTube, sign up now. That's how you can help. You want your favorite publisher to be on here? Sign up, start reading comics on Global Comix, support them. That way they've got the reader base. They can take those numbers to whatever, Marvel or some manga publisher or what have you, and say, hey, look, not only do we have these people that are, signed up, they're asking for your books, right? That's what's going to move the needle. At the end of the day, these publishers are, they want to make money. They want to know that people are going to check out the book. So yeah, go and support Global Comix now. Again, link in the show notes to check it out. It doesn't cost you anything to go, and like Chris said, you can a lot of books. You can check out the first couple pages. You'll understand what it looks like, how it's going to read on your phone or tablet or computer, or what have you. It doesn't cost you anything to go and check it out. There's tons of fantastic books there. So, Chris, I really want to thank you for your time. I'm excited for the future of Global Comix. I'm definitely going to be reading and subscribing and supporting. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience before we sign off here?
You kind of. You did such a great job with that. The only thing I can add on top of the recommendation that you had on download and subscribe is, when you're on the platform, go find stories by independent creators. There's thousands of them that are making such amazing stories, and these are people that are aspiring to be able to live off of their craftsmanship. They're honing their craftsmanship, and they're giving it their all. They deserve your eyeballs, and they also deserve part of your subscription. So if you come into the platform, please try and spend some time every week to find something new, and give those creators a love.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Definitely, anybody who gets into comics, they're doing it out of love of story and craft, not because they plan on getting rich. So, supporting them is just fantastic. It's a noble endeavor. So, if somebody wants to kind of follow along, obviously, link in the show notes to go and check out Global Comix. But if somebody wants to follow along in terms of when news is coming out, publishers being added, maybe you guys are highlighting a new independent story or what have you. Does Global Comix have a presence on social media? Is there a place I can be following to get news about what's coming?
100%. So we are on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on Threads. Either of those is, well, maybe not Facebook as much, but Twitter, Threads, and Instagram is definitely a place where we are doing promotions. We're posting about news. We're spotlighting creators and publishers like on a daily basis and multiple times a day. So those would probably be the best places to just kind of stay up to date. But then, actually, if you have an account on Global Comix, you'll get the updates and the announcements directly from us, both in the app as well as via email, should you opt in for that. So recommend just joining the community, follow us along, and share the fun.
Yeah, 100%. Sharing the fun of comics, everybody. So if you're having trouble finding Global Comix on any of those social media websites, again, I'll put a link in the show notes to go and check them out. So, Chris, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you. I wish you the best of luck. I hope Global Comix becomes the digital place to go for everybody to get comics, because it's just such a fantastic product. So again, kudos to you and your team for building things the right way, both in terms of the love of comics and wanting to present the stories in the best way, but also the technological achievements. Again, with an IT background, I know how much work's gone into this, and it's the best platform I've ever seen. So you guys have done a fantastic job.
Oh my God, thank you so much. That is such a compliment. I don't even know how to respond. Honestly, thank you. It's moments like this that make it all worth it for me and for the team. Knowing that we're doing something that people love and that people appreciate. The thing I'm gonna take this comment back with me, and I'm gonna put it in our internal Slack the moment that I hop off this call, and share with them what you said, because that's so meaningful. Truly, thank you so much.
Well, again, it goes back to the fact I love comics so much, and being able, when I have a little bit of free time, wanting to be able to read them. I always have my phone on me. I've never had a platform where it's usually like, nah, this isn't the reading experience I want. I'd rather just sit here and stare at the wall than read a comic. That's not the case with Global. It's fantastic what you guys have built. So, Chris and I want to thank everybody for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time, everybody. I can't encourage you enough to go and check out the platform. It costs you nothing to go and check it out. I think it's worthwhile. It's affordable, and probably, again, the best way to read comics digitally these days. So thanks for joining us, everybody. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next time.